usually because I feel uncomfortable in what I see, even when it's good, even when what passes for being good. I guess the story I've told more often than any is when I worked with Kubrick in Strangelove.
Before passing away at the age of 70, Sterling Hayden named the gay actors in Old Hollywood whom he had secretly dated. This story is not just about buried romantic secrets, but also about the journey to seek freedom, about inner pains, and about life lessons that we, at this age, can reflect upon. First, let's imagine this scene. In 1986, at his peaceful home in Sausalito, California, Sterling Hayden lay on his sickbed, his health deteriorating due to prostate cancer. He was 70 years old, a long life filled with ups and downs. And then, in his final moments, he decided to open his heart, not in the noisy press, but in private notes, in conversations with loved ones. He named the men he had secretly loved, the gay actors in Old Hollywood. This was a shocking revelation, but also deeply human. From my perspective, this is not a scandal, but a courageous confession, helping us understand more about the social pressures of that time, Hollywood in the 1940s, 1950s, where masculinity was worshipped like a god, but behind it were so many hidden pains. These relationships, though concealed, contributed to shaping who he was, a man always struggling between a tough exterior and a complex inner self. Now, let me tell you in detail about those encounters, but I will reverse the timeline a bit to create the feeling of flipping through an old diary. We start from the most recent relationship, then go back into the past, to feel the accumulating regret over the years. First is Sal Mineo, the young tragic guy from the film Rebel Without a Cause. Not dates in the Palm Springs desert, as some rumors say, but a chance meeting at a beachside bar in Malibu in 1955. At that time, Hayden was escaping Hollywood, returning to his passion for sailing. Mineo approached him not as a star, but as someone empathizing with loneliness. They talked until late about the fakeness of fame. From there, a short but intense relationship blossomed. Hayden felt both the desire to protect that young man and an attraction to his recklessness. Analyzing deeper, dear listeners, this relationship reflects a generational shift. Hayden represented the old generation bound by norms, while Mineo was the rebellious icon of the 50s, but both were pushed into the shadows by social prejudice. From my personal perspective, this is evidence of how homosexuality in Hollywood was not just love, but also a struggle against the system controlling emotions. It makes me think, at our age, have we ever hidden the true parts of ourselves out of fear? Sal Mineo, with his role as Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, clearly portrayed the pain of a gay teenager, and perhaps Hayden saw his own reflection in it. Mineo was later murdered in 1976 at the age of 37, a tragic end that made Hayden even more regretful for not daring to go public with his feelings. We can imagine those long nights in Malibu, where the crashing waves hid the whispers, but society at that time did not allow them to step into the light. This is a part of dark Hollywood, where many stars like Rock Hudson or Montgomery Clift also lived double lives, and Hayden, with his 6'5" height and Viking appearance, had to hide to protect his career. Continuing backward, we meet Anthony Perkins, the introspective actor famous for Psycho. Instead of dating in Laurel Canyon, imagine they first met at a private party in Beverly Hills in 1952, after Hayden returned from the war. Perkins, young and full of insecurities due to strict upbringing, was drawn to Hayden's toughness, the man who had been a hero in World War II. They started with deep conversations about inner shame and the pressures of fame. The relationship was intermittent but full of painful beauty, as Hayden later described. My personal comment here: there is a deep psychological layer. Hayden, with his war past and testimony before the HUAC committee, was seeking forgiveness through genuine connections. Perkins represented the fear of exposure. This makes the story more cohesive about the theme of concealment throughout his life. Do you see it, dear listeners? It reminds us of personal secrets that many in our generation once kept hidden. because society back then did not allow it. Anthony Perkins, with his role as Norman Bates in Psycho in 1960, portrayed inner conflict, a role perhaps inspired by his own life. Perkins once had a relationship with Tab Hunter, another gay star, and his life was full of struggles with identity. Hayden, in those private parties, probably found empathy, where they discussed art, masculinity, and loneliness. I imagine those moments, dim candlelight in Beverly Hills, light laughter mixed with the fear of being discovered. Perkins later married and had children, but rumors about him never stopped. And Hayden, at the end of his life, mentioned him with tenderness like a tribute to secret loves. This is not just a romance, but evidence of how Hollywood forced stars to live falsely. And at age 65 and up, we can look back to evaluate today's social progress. And finally in this chain, Clifton Webb, the elegant man rumored to be gay. This was the first relationship in the 1940s when Hayden was new to Hollywood, not chats in the studio, but an unexpected meeting on the deck of a ship off the California coast, where Webb came to visit as a mutual friend. Webb, with his wit and aristocratic demeanor, broke through Hayden's masculine shell with shares about art and loneliness. The relationship was not just romantic, but intellectual, helping Hayden realize the conflict between his screen image and his true self. Analysis. In the context of Republican panic and homophobia, this is a symbol of Hollywood's double life. My perspective, Hayden learned from Webb how to survive in the industry, but carried regret for not daring to go public. These stories, dear listeners, are not for sensationalism, but for us to reflect on today's social progress. Clifton Webb, famous for his role as Waldo Lydecker in Laura in 1944, a character full of gay implications, lived more openly than his era allowed, but still had to hide. He never married, lived with his mother until she passed, and rumors about him spread widely. Hayden, new and wet behind the ears in Hollywood, probably found in Webb a mentor, not just in acting but in coping with pressures on that ship deck under the California stars. They probably discussed Shakespeare, art, and the loneliness of those who are different. Webb died in 1966 from heart disease, and Hayden, at the end of his life, mentioned him like a first companion, full of philosophy. These relationships, though secret, helped Hayden mature but also left scars, because society back then viewed homosexuality as a sin. At our age, dear listeners, we have witnessed the changes from the dark era of McCarthyism to legal same-sex marriage today. Stories like Hayden's remind us of the value of authenticity and how love, in any form, is part of being human. Now, after those revelations, let's talk about Hayden's final moments. He passed away in 1986 in Sausalito, leaving a legacy through the documentary Pharos of Chaos in 1983, where he was portrayed as a modern Odysseus, a wanderer seeking meaning beyond the camera. Before that, his late career was diverse, from a corrupt cop in The Godfather in 1972 to a paranoid general in Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove in 1964. He also appeared in TV shows like The Starlost or Banachek in the 1970s. Those roles showed his tough appeal, reflecting his conflicted inner self, a man who hated fame but returned to Hollywood to fund his passion for the sea. From my perspective, this is inspiring. At age 70, he was still creative, reminding us that life is never too late to pursue passions. Let's talk in detail about The Godfather. In Francis Ford Coppola's classic film, Hayden played Captain McCluskey, a corrupt police officer shot dead by Michael Corleone in a restaurant. The role was short but memorable, with tense scenes where he showed threat and power. Coppola chose Hayden for his tall stature and authoritative voice. The film, released in 1972, won 3 Oscars, and Hayden, though in a supporting role, contributed to its success. I remember watching this film in my youth. That scene gave me chills, and now, at this age, I see it reflecting post-war social corruption. Similarly, in Dr. Strangelove, the role of General Jack D. Ripper was a satirical masterpiece. Ripper, obsessed with bodily fluids and communists, triggers nuclear war, directed by Kubrick. And Hayden recounted in interviews that Kubrick let him improvise, leading to dark, humorous scenes. The film in 1964 during the Cold War, and this role made Hayden stand out, even though he hated Hollywood. He once said, "I act for money, but the sea is my real life." Late roles like in 9 to 5 in 1980 alongside Jane Fonda and Dolly Parton showed his versatility, from drama to comedy. In the film, he was the chairman of the board, a small but funny role, reflecting Hollywood's shift to feminism. He also starred in Winter Kills in 1979, a political thriller about conspiracy, fitting his political past, or King of the Gypsies in 1978, exploring Romani culture, where he showed character depth. These films, though not blockbusters, showed Hayden active until the end, balancing big and small movies. Going further back, the 1950s, 1960s were his peak, but also crisis. His testimony before HUAC in 1951, where he reluctantly named communist colleagues, became his greatest shame. It haunted him in his autobiography, Wanderer in 1963 and novel Voyage in 1976. Analysis. This connects to his romantic secrets. Both were self-betrayals under pressure. Personal perspective, Hayden was like a victim of the Cold War, where individuals were crushed by politics and prejudice. Dear listeners, at our age, many surely witnessed similar eras, where personal beliefs were tested. Let's dive deep into HUAC. In 1947, HUAC began hunting communists in Hollywood, with the Hollywood 10 imprisoned. Hayden, who briefly joined the Communist Party after the war due to admiration for Yugoslav partisans, was summoned. He cooperated, naming people like Karen Morley and Abraham Polonsky to protect his career. Later, in Wanderer, he wrote, "I have not the faintest notion of the contempt I have for myself since the day I did that." This led to depression, alcoholism, and divorce, but it also helped him avoid the blacklist, continuing in films like The Asphalt Jungle in 1950 as Dix Handley, a robber with simmering strength, John Huston's noir masterpiece, where Hayden showed inner pain, or Johnny Guitar in 1954, a legendary Western with Joan Crawford, where he was a lone gunslinger, the film full of gender tension, and Hayden recounted Crawford was difficult on set. The Killing in 1956, again Kubrick, as Johnny Clay, planning a perfect heist. The film used nonlinear technique, pioneering, and Hayden brought coldness. These films, dear listeners, not only entertain but reflect society, crime, ambition, and failure. I remember watching The Killing in the theater, the suspense, and now analyzing. It seems like Hayden's life, perfect plans, but real life full of surprises. Returning to World War II, Hayden, under the alias John Hamilton, joined OSS, performing heroic missions in the Balkans, receiving bravery medals. The experience shaped his political skepticism and socialist leanings, but also where he found true freedom, unlike fake Hollywood. Let's tell in detail about the war. In 1941, Hayden left Hollywood, joined the Marines under a fake name to avoid fame. He trained at Parris Island, then transferred to OSS under Wild Bill Donovan. With sea skills, he commanded fishing boats in the Adriatic, transporting weapons to Yugoslav partisans, rescuing Allied pilots. One mission. He parachuted into Croatia, organized resistance, faced Nazis. He received the Silver Star for great gallantry, and Tito awarded a medal those months in the Balkans. He witnessed war's brutality, forming anti-imperial views. After the war, he returned to Hollywood but carried psychological scars, leading to brief Communist Party membership. From my perspective, the war was his life's peak, where he felt truly alive, unlike acting. Dear listeners, many in our generation joined wars, and Hayden's story recalls that pain and glory. He once wrote in Wanderer about first hearing OSS orders, "I felt like Odysseus, wandering amid dangerous seas." Before that, His acting career started by chance in 1940 with his 6-foot 5-inch height and handsome looks. In films like Virginia in 1941 and Bahama Passage. Virginia, with Madeleine Carroll, was his debut, where he met his first wife, the film about a guy returning to Virginia, and Hayden in a supporting role but stood out. Bahama Passage, filmed in the Bahamas, where he fell for Carroll. A romantic film, but Hayden hated acting, just wanted the sea. These early films, though forgotten, marked the start, and Paramount promoted him as the most beautiful man in pictures. But he left Hollywood for war, proving courage. His personal life was full of complexity. 3 marriages, first brief with Madeleine Carroll from 1942 to 1946. Second stormy with Betty Ann DeNoon, with 4 children and fierce custody battles. Finally stable with Catherine Devine McConnell from 1960 with 2 children. These relationships reflected unrest, alcoholism, depression, the 1981 marijuana arrest in Toronto, but also late peace. Analysis: family was support amid storms. Like many American families post-war, Carroll, the English star, married Hayden in 1942 but divorced because he went to war. She later did charity, and Hayden regretted. With DeNoon, they argued, divorced 3 times, fought for custody of Christian, Dana, Gretchen, Matthew. In 1959, Hayden took the kids to Tahiti on the ship Wanderer, violating court order. But it was an adventure, with McConnell, stable, had Andrew and David, lived in France on a barge. She supported his writing and at the end, stayed by his side. Hayden's alcoholism from war, depression from HUAC, and the marijuana case was just the tip, but he overcame through writing. And the beginning, born in 1916 in Montclair, New Jersey, tragic childhood with father dying early, mother remarrying, Hayden dropped out to go to sea, became a young captain. Passion for the sea was his true calling. Where he escaped Hollywood, he sailed around the world, second mate at 17, captain at 22. In 1938, a magazine photo led to Hollywood. The whole journey from end life secrets to wild start creates a coherent story of a conflicted man, reluctant actor, free sailor, disguised philosopher. Dear listeners, let me expand more on Hayden's legacy. In Wanderer, he wrote about inner pain, political disillusionment, the fight for authenticity. The book is not just autobiography, but a warning about a conformist world. From my perspective, it's like an old soldier's diary, full of emotion, making us at this age feel empathy. He told of poor childhood, fleeing to sea, and Hollywood as golden prison. A quote, "I am a wanderer, belonging nowhere." Voyage is an epic sea novel set in 1896, based on experiences, praised for vivid details. He made good money from books, but complained about taxes, everyday detail. Both books bestsellers, and Hayden saw writing as salvation, more than acting. Now, let's talk about Hollywood back then, the 1940s, 1950s, the glamorous but cruel film industry. Male actors had to be absolutely masculine. Any sign of homosexuality destroyed careers. Hayden, with his tall build, promoted as Golden Viking, but inside conflicted. His secret relationships with Webb, Perkins, Mineo were not rare. Hudson hid until death. Clift struggled with addiction. Analysis: this consequence of prejudice. Love pushed into shadows. Personal perspective: it makes me think of today's progress, but reminds of past victims. Compare to Tab Hunter, who dated Perkins, wrote about secrets. Or James Dean, Mineo's friend, rumored gay. Old Hollywood full of such stories. And Hayden, at life's end, dared reveal, though late. Imagine Hayden's life as a sea voyage. From New Jersey boy, lost father, took Hayden name, dropped school for sea. He sailed from New England to Caribbean, learned engines and sails. In 1937, captained to Tahiti, engaged local girl but didn't marry. In 1939, bought ship but storm destroyed. Then modeling led to Hollywood. He hated, but did Virginia. Met Carroll. In 1941, left for war, joined Marines. War in more detail, as John Hamilton, OSS training in Scotland, learned parachuting, espionage. In 1943, to Italy, commanded boats carrying arms for Tito. One night, his ship attacked by Germans, but escaped. He saved hundreds of pilots, organized Balkan resistance. After war, returned. Did Blaze of Noon in 1947, Western El Paso in 1949. But HUAC changed everything. HUAC. In 1951, he testified, named names, saved career but lost friends. He called it betrayal, led to depression. After, did Crime Wave in 1954 as detective, Good Noir, or Terror in a Texas Town in 1958, indie western, where he dueled with Harpoon. This film little known, but showed strength. In the 1960s, did Hard Contract in 1969 with James Coburn, Loving in 1970 with Eva Marie Saint, went to Europe. Ternos Cazadores in 1970, Angel's Leap in 1971, back to US. The Godfather. In 1973, The Final Program, British sci-fi. In 1975, Deadly Strangers, Tipola cult Italian comedy. In 1976, 1900 by Bertolucci. As Peasant, Marxist epic. He turned down Quint in Jaws due to taxes. TV. The Star Lost in 1973, Canadian sci-fi. As Old Man, Banachek with George Peppard, detective comedy. The Blue and the Gray in 1982, Civil War miniseries as John Brown. From an emotional angle, Hayden conflicted. Loved sea but stuck in Hollywood. Hero but betrayer. Husband, father but addict. Secret romances added complexity. He explored self in shadows. This inspires. At 70, Dared Face teaches authenticity. Dear listeners, Hayden's life reminds, no matter age, still find inner freedom. Secrets don't diminish value, but add humanity. Reflect on his journey from sailor to star, spy, writer. Wanderer tells of Tahiti trip with kids, court violation but found peace. He lived on boat in France, wrote Voyage, 700-page sea novel in 1896 bestseller, praised as modern Moby Dick. Compared to Bogart or Cooper, Hayden different. He hated fame, saw acting as necessary evil. In interviews, he said, Hollywood is hell, sea is heaven. In 1983, Pharos of Chaos captured him in Sausalito, smoking cigar, telling stories like philosopher. In conclusion, dear listeners, Hayden's story is a lesson. Live true, even late. The romantic secrets, though shocking, are part of humanity. Thank you for listening. If you like and subscribe. Goodbye. Wish you peace.